Imagine you have the opportunity to get in front of, say 700 of your ideal prospects virtually on, or someday at a live event. Your host has given you 45 minutes to make a presentation and close, yet close for an offer of your choosing. How confident would you be that you would get the result you want and an extremely high closing percentage? What if there was a simple way that you could organize your thinking, pick the right fit message for your audience, deliver that message with power, conviction, and believability, all while feeling relaxed, calm, and confident? That's what this podcast is going to help you do. Ooh. Joel Weldon is a longtime member of Genius Network. He's a full-time professional speaker and speaking skills coach to hundreds of highly successful entrepreneurs and result leaders. Joel is the oldest member of Genius Network, yet he has more enthusiasm and energy than some of our members half his age. He's been paid to speak at over 3,000 events and has personally coached and critiqued over 10,000 speakers, which is true. That's why this guy's one of the best in the world. He's an original founder of the National Speakers Association, and there's even a rumor that he's a licensed pork inspector and a notary public. We can't verify these last two facts. Some people can do and some people can coach. Joel is unique in the fact that he can do both when it comes to making speaking simple and helping you get the results you want every time you open your mouth. Joel is also extremely creative and innovative. Way back in 1974, he created a business card that basically, this is it, okay? Says success comes in cans, not in cannots, okay? And this sits on over 500,000 people's desks or wherever they do their work. His business card is a heavy 8-ounce can, okay? So it says success comes in cans, not in cannots. That message sums up Joel's philosophy as well as ours. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. You can do an even better. You can be an even better communicator and speaker. And this presentation from Joel will show you how to do it. So, Joel, what didn't I say about you that everyone needs to know?
Well, how much I love you. That would be a good thing, because I was brought to Joe kicking and screaming about 6.5 years ago by a mutual friend. And he told me to go meet Joe Polish. And so I looked him up online. I read his background, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to go meet this guy. So I told my friend, whose name is Martin Howie, I just wasn't interested. He said, no, you got to do it. Well, he didn't let up on me. After like 6 or 7 rejections and me turning him away, he did the worst thing a friend can do. He played the guilty card. And he said to me on the phone, Joel, I know you don't want to see Joe Polish. I know you don't have any interest in meeting him or what he's doing, but I want you to do it for me. Now, what would you say if somebody said that to you? So I had to go and see him. And within 10 minutes, I thought this was really cool. And that's now over, 6 years ago. And I paid $150,000 to be around this guy, six times of 25 grand. It's the best money I've ever spent. It certainly is the best business decision I've ever made. And as Joe mentioned in the introduction, I'm the oldest member of Genius. I mean, my Social Security card is 5. So I've been around a long time. And now there is a rumor I was a busboy at the Last Supper, but that's not really true. But seriously, I've been around a long time, and I'm not planning to slow down at all. So that's why I wanted to open and just tell you, Joe, I do love you. And these 6 years have been just a marvelous revelation of what ideas can do. And that's what we're going to talk about for you, is even though this subject is about speaking, it's really about communicating. And a study was done at the University of Michigan that 71% of the average workday is spent in some form of communication. Listening, writing, talking, reading, all of those are forms of communication. So just ask yourself, how good of a communicator am I? Because if your ability to communicate what you have in your mind is so clear that you can transfer that to the mind of someone else, you can be so much more successful than any ordinary person. And that is a learned skill. So our format, and Joe, let me just check what our format is, Dean. Are we going to just have a discussion back and forth between the three of us, and then any questions that come up? Because you can stop me at any time and it won't throw me off at all. So we can go in any direction you want.
Well, here's what I was hoping to do. I wanted to actually not have you have any clue what we were going to do today, because my sole purpose was to see if I could throw you off, because, you know, there's a little bit of pressure. There's not I mean, for what you're used to, there's 243 people that are on right now, okay, that are watching this live. And I don't know if we're actually streaming this on the Facebook thing. There could be more over there, which I have no idea, because I'm not looking at that. So I want to ask you some questions. I want Dean to be able to pipe in and ask some questions. I have to mention this because this is like a big deal. So Ben Hardy is on right now. I don't know where he's at, but Ben Hardy posted, "I attest that Joel is the best. Excited to learn." And Ben has been the #1 writer in the world at medium.com. He's got millions of people that read his stuff. He's one of the most amazing people on the planet, young guy, PhD, and his latest book is called Personality Isn't Permanent, which you've heard me talk about on the last 2 meetings, which is awesome. So, and there's a lot of people that if you just read the comments about what people are saying about Joel here, I'm not obviously reading all of them, but there's some good ones. So yeah, we'll do some Q&A with you, Joel, and then we'll do some Q&A with the audience so that people here listening, after they get, you know, some stuff, they can ask you some questions. So, Dean, you want me to start, or you want to start?
Yeah, you go right ahead.
Okay. So, Joel, over the course of your career, what are the 3 most valuable speaking and presentation lessons you've learned or discovered?
Okay, that's a great question. So as you're listening to this, what about in your own experience? What has been, when it comes to speaking, your aha moments? Well, since you're asking me that question, the first thing I would say is that speaking is a learned skill. Once that became clear to me in 1969, when I went to a Toastmasters club in Tempe, Arizona, and realized that I needed to learn how to speak. I couldn't even lead my Sunday school class in silent prayer. I mean, that's bad. And I was terrified standing up in front of a group. I mean, if anybody ever told me I'd have a 46-year career as a professional speaker when I couldn't even lead my Sunday school class in a silent prayer, how could that be? So that's the first thing, that it's a learned skill. You don't have to be naturally gregarious and outgoing and dynamic. You can be dull, boring, and monotone and be highly effective. One of the greatest speakers recently passed on a few years ago, Jim Rohn. And I've known Jim over the last 40 years. Jim was not a high energy guy. He spoke in a monotone, but people hung on every word he said because what he said was so important. So that's the first thing I'd like you to think about, that speaking effectively is a learned skill. Number 2, that being an effective communicator is the fastest and best way to position you as an expert, a thought leader, a results getter. That your ability to communicate to more than one person at one time is going to help position you at a higher level in whatever field that you're in. And third and most important, it's being you. Speaking effectively is a private conversation held publicly. It is not a performance. Mm-hmm. And Jennifer Carroll has known me longer probably than anybody else on this call, other than Jenny Lachlan, who is on this call, who's my daughter and one of our certified coaches of the Ultimate Speaking System. Hi, Jennifer. And Jennifer knows that what you're seeing now is just like I am if we were sitting in her living room or I was with one of her kids. It's not a performance. And that's what you need to think of. Be congruent, be you. When you're you, you're relaxed, you're calm, and you're confident. And if you are dull, boring, and monotone, you can build that into a presentation. So one of my clients, we called him Boring Bob. One of the things we did when we introduced him at a meeting, the president of the company said that the next part of the program is going to be the most difficult. Boring Bob is going to come up. He's our chief financial officer. He's going to give us all the reports for the year. It's going to take an hour. Every year that he does this, people fall asleep. So we have a plan this year. If the person next to you starts to fall asleep, you got to wake them up. For the people in the front row, if Bob starts to fall asleep while he's talking, you got to go on stage and wake him up. Well, before Bob said his first word, they were clapping and cheering. He never changed his presentation. He was dull, boring, and monotone. We just worked out a system to capitalize on that negative and turn it into a positive. So just think about those three things: that it's a learned skill, it's the fastest way to position you as an expert, and be yourself.
Love it. Love it. So, Dean, I can keep going unless you want to.
Well, I think that you recommend, that there's not much. I can tell, like, from learning speaking, just getting the more comfortable you are in bigger groups, that it does become much more natural. I remember that same thing, being fearful, not fearful, but more nervous the first time I did a homebuyer workshop as a real estate agent. I had, 18 people, and it was like a much bigger nervousness than being in front of 1,000 people became. And you're right, just being natural was really a thing, more conversational too, in a way.
Well, let me just comment about you, Dean. In the years that I've known you, you're always the same.
Yeah,
just like what you're saying right now. I mean, the attire that you have, the black hat, the black shirt, the black pants, shorts, I mean, that's the look. Mm-hmm. And you are the same. You are real. And that's what you need to think of as you're listening to this. Mm-hmm. Be you. There's no one else like you in the world. Everybody else is already taken. Why would you try to be somebody else? Mm-hmm. And if there's anything about that, like I noticed we had people from all over the world. We had Peru, South Africa. When we have an accent, which could add difficulty in understanding you, you just build that into the introduction. That Fred is from Peru. English is his second language, but he's an expert at building email lists. So you're going to really need to concentrate on what he says. And even if you only get half of what he shares, you'll be still twice as far ahead in building your email list. So pay close attention and don't let his accent distract. And if you say something like that, people say, well, I can understand everything he says. But if we don't do it, then it can become a distraction.
That's one thing I've learned from you, is observing the introductions and how you went through exercises with us in Genius Network meetings to lay out an introduction for ourselves. And what you just said, so much of it, you can set the table, you can set everything up in the introduction.
Let's just add that that's such an important part, Dean. And since we have Ben Hardy on here, and having worked on many of his introductions, the things that he speaks on, since he's been a client since the 3 years that he's joined Genius Network, if you get a good introduction, and there's a certain system in writing an introduction, and Joe, I think I've written 187 introductions for Genius Network members that have spoken at our events. And there's a system of doing it. And when you get a great introduction, you speak downhill. Now, if you've ridden a bike, when you go down a hill, it's a lot easier than going up a hill. And unfortunately, most people begin speaking uphill. They're trying to drag the audience into the message. But a great introduction enables you to have the audience moving with you before you have even said your first words. And that's the key of a great introduction. And remember, the introduction is not really about you. It's about the message and how that message is going to help your audience.
You know what, Joel, let me There's a lot of questions that I think other people may have. So I want to, if you have something like nervousness or how do you deal with it? I mean, like when Dean was talking, reminded me the very first time that I ever gave a presentation. I had written a sales letter because I had learned marketing, and I sent it out. I was selling a program teaching carpet and upholstery cleaners how to build and grow their business because I was a convert of my own system, but I'd never yet publicly spoke about it. I had this program, I had this course, I was doing everything through direct mail. So I had this bizarre skill that I had, learned and developed to write a sales letter. And I got a supplier in San Diego named Dennis Iverson, I think. Yeah, Dennis Iverson. And we sent a letter to all these local, from his location, he sold chemicals and equipment and stuff, to invite them to come to a one-day event called How to Double Your Business in 6 months or Less. And they would spend all day with me teaching them how to build and grow their business. And it was a $97 a person seminar. And we ended up signing up 52 people to come to this thing. And I had never given really a public presentation before, except like introducing people when I was the Arizona director of the Carpet and Fabric Care Institute back in 1992 and 1993. Believe it or not, I used to bring all the educational courses to Arizona teaching cleaners how to clean carpets. Who would have known, right? So anyway, I literally sold these people in this event. I had no idea what I was doing. And people would tell me that, after the first 5 minutes, the nervousness goes away. I was sweating the entire day. It was one of the most nerve-wracking things, and I grew up incredibly shy and introverted. And so, I mean, I didn't like speaking. I was a drug addict in high school. I remember getting stoned in high school to do a public speech because I was so nervous on the dangers of THC. That's how messed up I was. I swear to God, it's a true story. And so I didn't have this whole background. I was incredibly nervous, but at the end of it, I still pitched and I sold $12,000 worth of my marketing course. And I was like, I better figure out how to get good at this because I'd never made that much money in my life. Like do it. And it worked. And that was me like incredibly nervous. So at that point I realized, man, how do I do this? And so that's what started it. And now, me and Dean, I remember me and Dean, we gave an hour presentation in front of 5,000 people, Yes. And we had this stuff. So and that was my speech. I just invited Dean into it because I'm sort of one of these inclusive sort of individuals.
That's the way he rolls.
Yeah. But so when it comes to fear, so you're going to say some great stuff. I've got some questions that I know is going to elicit some great stuff. If someone here is like, I can't picture myself speaking in front of people, I'm nervous. And you just said it's, be yourself, but their self is, I'm scared, I can't do this. What would you say to that person?
Well, if you think about what causes people to be nervous, and I think one of the words that usually comes to mind is you become self-conscious. And that's the antithesis of what makes a great speaker. It's not about you. If you accept that as one of the basic beliefs of everything that it's taken me these 46 years to learn about speaking, is it's not about you. It's about your audience. And if you get yourself out of the way, you're not self-conscious. If you're not self-conscious, you don't become nervous. You're focused on how these ideas can help others. And I know that I don't know you better than anybody else on this broadcast, Joe, but I know you very well, having watched you for many hours. And when I see you speak, I know that that brain inside is thinking one thing: how is this going to help them? Mm-hmm. And once you do that, it's not about Joe Polish. And that's what you need to think of as you watch and listen to what we're sharing, that when you're focused on your message and how it can meet the needs of your audience, how it can help your audience or your listeners overcome their fears, their worries, their concerns, or reinforce their successes, it's not about you.
Yeah.
And then, so you're not looking at what does your hair look like and what does my clothes look like. That's not part of it. Yeah, you need to check your hair before you start, and then that's it. Forget about you. And that's the best way that you can get away from the nervousness and the fear. And if you look at fear as an acronym, false evidence appearing real, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. If you have the opportunity to talk virtually or in front of a live audience, just think, how is this going to help them?
Yeah, that's a really great. I've got to read this because there's this comment from Celia Black, who's like freaking brilliant, and she wrote, "I get stuck thinking that no one wants to hear what I have to say," and then, hey Anna, I'm reading all these comments. These are great. And then Jim writes, "Celia, your inner voice is a liar." So that's an interesting thing, though, because you got people that second guess or doubt themselves. And by the way, Ben, this is going to sound like an aside, but Ben Hardy, I'm going to call on you in a moment because I want you to actually come on and say something. But what, when someone's doubting themselves and they're yet at the stage where there are people that are on here right now that their success, if you want to call it financial, right, their ability to do it is limited by this part of them that is doubting themselves, that's second guessing themselves, that doesn't think they're good enough, imposter syndrome, a billion different ways that people can frame stuff. And I know that these people are incredible in terms of their knowledge base and stuff like that. So again, what would you say to that, Joel?
Well, since you mentioned Ben Hardy and he's going to come on, and for those of you that know a little bit about Ben, he now has a whole bunch of children. And he just had twins, and they're having another one, or they already had the other one, and they have 3 adopted children. So Ben is going to come on and teach us how to change diapers. That's his talk. Now, if that was the subject Ben Hardy's going to talk about, changing baby diapers, is that a subject relevant to this audience on I Love Marketing on our meetup? No. So if Ben is going to talk about the power of a book and how the book you have within you can change your life and the lives of others, and why you should think about writing it like he did with the 2 books that he's had published, that's a whole different story. So one of the things to think of when you feel like Cecilia said, well, they're not really going to be interested in this subject, then they shouldn't be hearing about it. We don't want to hear about Ben changing diapers. That's not relevant. That does not meet a need. It does not overcome a fear. It doesn't reinforce a victory unless you just happen to have a couple of babies at home and you've never changed a diaper before. And once you know that what your subject is and how relevant it is to your audience, that imposter syndrome, that fear goes away, because you know that what you're going to say is going to help that audience. And I know whatever Ben is going to say is going to help our audience. So Ben, I call Ben my adopted son from another mother. And I love you, my friend, Ben, even though my daughter is on the call with us. That
doesn't sound as, yeah.
What's Ben going to say?
Where's Ben? Ben, where are you? It'd be really funny if he's like nowhere to be found right now.
Yeah, right.
I'm trying to think. Does anyone see him? Is he still here? Or is he muted?
I'm here. What's up, guys?
Okay, there you are.
Maybe he's changing a diaper.
No, Ben, here's what I wanted you to say. So you just wrote personality isn't permanent. You've just done this exhaustive research, and you have literally found that most personality tests not only are not accurate and valid, they're dangerous in some cases. And this whole introverted, extroverted, and all the labels that people give, you literally have all this proof, and you wrote an entire book. So if someone's like, I can't do this, you're like, well, yeah, but you can become whoever you want to become within the ability of your ability to develop yourself. So one of the thing that made me think about this is the whole subject, I'm nervous, or, no one wants to hear my ideas. Your personality, like, speak to that topic, Ben, if you could, because again, you just wrote a whole book on this.
Well, I think Joel said it best. I mean, and by the way, hi everyone, I'm in my car. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee, or sorry, not Tennessee, in Nebraska. This is where my family lives. So I think Joel said it best. He said that speaking is a learnable skill, and pretty much anything is a learnable skill if you invest in it, and if you visualize it, and if you obviously if you develop the skill. So whether it's extroversion, whether it's speaking, all of these things are learnable skills. And so, yeah, I mean, what do you want? What specifically do you want me to talk about?
Well, I want more so than anything. I tell people like because you actually teach them in your book what they can do to dramatically improve their life, no matter what sort of excuses or stuck points they have. So do a pitch for your book. I mean, that's, if it wasn't obvious, I'm a marketer. Yeah,
absolutely. So here is the book, Personality Isn't Permanent. So one thing that's really cool is that they did a whole study on about 300 people who went to Harvard the study went for 75 years. And basically, when you look at someone's life over 75 years, there are many unexpected changes that happen. So, I mean, the research is pretty obvious that your personality, well, I'll just talk to anyone here. So if you think about who you are right now, you're probably not exactly the same person you were 10 years ago. Hopefully you've made some adjustments. And I'm sure that if you actually look at it, you're not exactly the same person. And what psychology shows is that you're actually going to underpredict how much you're going to be different in 10 years from now. But ultimately, the goal is that you visualize your future self. Joe and all of you guys help people do is all of the research in psychology is pointing towards the future, not the past. For about 100 years, the whole field of psychology said that the past is what drives you. And that's false. It's not actually the past that drives you. It's actually the future that draws you. The future is the thing that draws all your decisions. And so what you want to do is obviously you want to visualize and decide who your future self is, and then make that your new narrative. You start investing money into that. And that's what I did. I started investing big into Genius Network, into learning how to speak with people like Joel Weldon. And when you start investing in your future self, you start to develop the capacity and the attributes of your future self. And that's where you start to break out of the patterns and the habits that have gotten you stuck. And so we can all do it. And actually what the research shows, and this is all straight out of Harvard, is that very few people actually conceptualize their future self and make that their new narratives. And your identity, by the way, your identity and your personality are two different things, but your identity is actually way more important. Your identity is the way you describe and define yourself. And most people, if you ask them who they are, they define themselves all about either the past or the present. Very few people are very strategic at defining their future self and using that as their narratives. But your narrative is usually the thing that predicts your behavior, and your behavior over time becomes your personality. So my invitation for people is, who is your future self? And when you get into rooms like this with Joe and others, your future self gets a lot bigger. And I can honestly say, and I just love to do this, Joe, but I invested in Genius Network about 3 years ago, and my whole life is completely different. I wouldn't have met people like Joel. So I just wanted to thank you, Joe, for investing, for letting me be a part of your group. It's really changed my life. And those types of investments, by the way, shatter your subconscious. Investing, this will be my last thought, Joe, but investing money into your future identity really is how you upgrade your subconscious.
Right. No, thank you, Ben. And I'll tell you, I remember, Joel, you will remember this, when Ben first talked. I think the first presentation he probably ever gave was maybe at Genius Network, right? And he was so nervous, and he had, we're talking, Ben is an incredibly smart guy, right? And highly educated, so well researched. He's, I'm just annoyed with him because he's 20 years younger than me. And basically, but it's the ability to now go out and speak. And Ben, how many podcasts have you recorded in the last year?
Probably 250. I did about 250 in this year, actually, in 2020, in preparation for the Personalities and Permanent launch. I did about 250.
Wait. So you recorded 250 podcasts in the last 6 months of this year?
Yeah, since around COVID-19 started, I hired someone. I did some who, not how action, got someone on my team who was amazing. And my schedule was just packed, about 5 a day for about 3.5 months. And so I was on a ton of different podcasts, a lot of huge ones, a lot of mid-tier ones, some small ones, but it was great. And a lot of them haven't even been released yet. Honestly, probably 60 of them haven't even been released yet, and they'll be released in the next 60 days.
So there you go. If there's something to be said about just doing the work, right? And think about how much better you get at your explaining what it is when you're on that many podcasts. So this all goes back to speaking. Even if you're not in front of a live audience, you are. So you're talking to someone and communicating. Gina on my team put a link to Ben's book, Personality Isn't Permanent. It is truly an amazing book. And the audio version is fantastic also, that you actually, I usually don't like it when the author doesn't read their book. You actually have a reader for your new book, which is amazing. And
I picked him, Joe. He was my favorite audiobook guy. He's done some sorry, he actually did The Body Keeps the Score. He's done some of my favorite audiobooks, and so I handpicked him. He's one of the best audiobook guys in the business.
So awesome. So thank you. All right, so we'll go back to Joel. Joel, let me ask you, what's the best way for someone to organize a speech and ensure it fits the audience they're speaking to?
Okay. So the question is really, how best can you organize all the ideas you have in your mind and connect them to your audience? So let me give a hypothetical situation. Imagine as you're listening to this, somebody says they want you to do, Ben mentioned 250 podcasts. So they want you to do a podcast, you're going to be on an hour. But instead of that, they say to you, okay, we're going to do a podcast, talk as long as you want. If you want to take 2 days, go for 2 days. You want 3 days, 4 days, we'll just keep recording, talk as long as you want. Do you think that would ever happen? No. It's never, I've been paid to speak at over 3,000 events, as Joe said. Not once has anybody ever said, talk as long as you want. They said, you've got 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever it is. So that's what you need to think of. You know so much about your subject, your expertise. You could talk literally for days about that subject, but we only have an hour podcast or an hour webinar. How do you know what to put in? And that's where it goes back to thinking about your audience. The only thing that you should put into a presentation are the ideas and thoughts that meet the needs of your audience that day, in that experience, on that subject, or help them overcome their worries, concerns, or fears, or reinforces what they're already doing well and successful. And that goes back to those 3 words I mentioned in the beginning: needs, fears, and victories. And when I created that part of a system, it made it so easy to organize your thinking to 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours. And that's what we did with Ben when he made that first presentation at Genius Network. We had 10 minutes. And when we started out working on the phone on this presentation, it was like 22 minutes long. So we had to cut it in half. And we ended up with really the essence of what his message was, which was how to build your email list. So that's really the best way to know that you're going to have the right subject for the right audience at that time. Does that make sense?
No, totally. So,
Hey, Joe, do you care if I interject real quick?
yeah, go ahead. And by the way, you're because you're out in the middle of nowhere, your phone goes a little bit in and out, but yeah, go for it.
Joe, one of the things he always teaches me, and he's said it many times, is to make it about the audience. But it's crazy how much time you can cut from your speaking if you just literally think of 1 to 3 points you want to make and just deliver on those 1 to 3 points straight to the audience. So many people spend half their time talking about themselves. And I just want to attest one more time, if anyone's thinking about Joel's program, I wouldn't have been able to speak on the Genius Network annual event, honestly, if it wasn't for Joel. So just wanted to say one more time, like, he will teach you the best stuff.
I totally agree. And Joel hasn't even pitched anything. So, Joel, you're going to almost have to now. So, no, thank you, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Drive safe, Ben.
Yeah, you know, with Joel Weldon, not only is he a very handsome man, but I love something I learned from Joel really early was your audience needs to know where you're going. It's like getting on a bus and the bus has this is the destination. And too often in my talks and other talks, it takes about halfway through or 10 minutes into the talk before you realize, oh, that's what she's talking about. So Joel made that really clear, and that made, I think, a lot of people much better speakers. And he's handsome.
Yeah.
Well, let me give you the system for doing that. Tim Paulson, thank you, Mrs. Paulson's little boy. And He's one of my other sons that I'd love to adopt.
Thank you.
Having 2 daughters and 2 grandsons and 2 granddaughters, I could use a guy like Tim and Ben. But seriously, the way that you can open a message to do just what Tim said, to make it impossible for the audience not to know what you're talking about, is to use 3 4-letter words. Know, have, feel. KNOW, have, feel. So in our time together, you're going to know. What are they going to know? Are they going to know facts, information, statistics, data? What are they going to learn about? What are they going to know? You'll also have, then what are you going to give them? Maybe you're going to have a handout. Maybe you're going to have a follow-up program. Maybe you're going to have an opportunity to ask you questions. So what will they know? What will they have? And then the last one is, and I know Jennifer Carroll wants to jump in on this one, how is this going to make you feel? Because remember, people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. So what is the feeling? So as a result of what we're going to talk about, you're going to feel even more confident. You're going to feel even more courageous. You're going to feel even more optimistic about your future. What is going to be the end result of the feeling you're going to leave your audience with? And just think for a moment how many times you've heard a speaker, when you were at a live meeting, turn to the person next to you and said, what are they talking about? It happens all the time. It will never happen if you put in those first few minutes, here's what you're going to know, here's what you're going to have, and here's how it's going to make you feel. So with that said, let's get started with the first idea. And now you're into your presentation. So that's one of the tools in our system on how to open any message so it's impossible to be misunderstood. Well, thank you, Tim, for bringing that up.
Thank you, Joel.
You know what, Joel, when it comes to longevity and stuff, the way my weird brain works, like in the back here, I've got this Nightingale. Hold on. I'm walking away from the mic. So I've got this Nightingale Keynote program that me and Tim Paulson did together in 2003, 2004. When was it, Tim?
2004.
Okay. And it's the #1 selling marketing program in the world for Nightingale Keynote. Sold millions of dollars worth of this program. It's called Piranha Marketing Success, 7 Success Multiplying Factors to Dominate Any Market You Enter. And you can now get this actually on Audible. Paul Colligan is there holding it up. And this is the one that look at this is the cassette tape version, right? And then we have the CD version. Then of course they ended up moving it to all online, right? So people can get it on Audible. But here's the thing. So this is Daryl Sutherland printed up this domino, and you guys have probably heard me talk about the first domino. What are the things that are the first domino? Well, you are actual friends with Earl Nightingale, who literally created Nightingale Keynote. And as a matter of fact, if you think of NSA and all of this stuff, we wouldn't even know each other, all of us, and all these things that have happened in the world of personal development, and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Tony Robbins tapes and all of this stuff, had it not been for individuals like that built an organization about sharing the speaking and communication of other humans. And now all of this stuff is licensed, to Audible. So it's just this, the history of the personal development industry. I mean, you've been there since the beginning when all of this stuff happened, because Earl Nightingale had the first, what was it? A platinum
first gold record
of, which actually I have hanging on the wall that you gave me a copy of that. Yeah. So, I mean, what makes, in your mind, people successful at speaking, and what causes them to fail?
Well, I think the answer to the first question is, what makes a successful speaker? It's one word: results. Just think about that. I mean, if we think of the great speakers in our nation's history, John F. Kennedy, what did he say? We're going to land a man on the moon in 10 years and bring him home safely. What was the result? we landed a man on the moon and brought him home safely. Ronald Reagan said, Gorbachev, tear down that wall. And what happened? The wall was turned down. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. And what happened with the civil rights movement? Look at the results those three speakers got with the words that they used. So that's what you need to think of as a communicator. What are the results that you're going to get? And one of the things in this system that I've developed is I've tried to create tools and ideas that are so doable, so simple and easy to use. And I've framed them around a word or a sentence that you taught me, Joe, that little hinges swing big doors, that little tweaks, just like opening with know, have, feel. So let me share with you as a listener one of the other little tweaks you could think of. So let's say if I said to you, Joe, I can help you earn more money.
Yep.
Now that sounds like a good statement, but you're probably pretty broke right now. Or if I said, Joe, I can help you get in better shape. Chances are you're probably not in very good shape now. But if I add one word in front of better or more, so here's the tool. Anytime you use the word better or more, put in even. So let me give you that statement again. Joe, I can help you earn even more money. Joe, I can help you get in even better shape. Look how the tone of that message completely changes by giving your listener credit. Now, that doesn't mean they can't get in better shape, but it means that they're already doing something in the right direction. And just that word even. So in working with so many of our members at Genius Network on their presentations, just putting little tweaks like that, it's simple stuff, but it's taken me 46 years to figure these things out by watching and critiquing over 10,000 speakers and seeing how little things like that can make a difference. So think about just little tweaks, easy things.
No, I totally agree. The interesting thing about what you just said, the psychology behind it, is that most of the self-help books are, what's wrong with you and how to fix it versus what's right with you and how to enhance it. And whenever you approach someone in that way, it's way less threatening and it's more validating, and they become more open to hearing what it is you have to say. So that framing that you did is really powerful. And one thing I learned from you early on is you made this analogy that I've talked about quite a bit, where you said if you had a beautiful or valuable painting and you duct taped it to the wall without any lighting versus if you put it in a frame and you put it in a museum and you had, great lighting, all of a sudden it's just a completely different context. So much of what we teach at I Love Marketing with the 8 profit activators, before, during, after, education-based marketing, all of the stuff is really about how to frame and position what it is you do. And then our friend Jason Fladlin has this great line where he's like, anything that you're selling, you want to put information in front of it. Well, people have to communicate in order to do that. So I want to ask you about what are some things that everyone here could do to frame their message in way. And now you're already talking about it. I mean, we're right in the middle of having a whole conversation. All of this is about framing, right? But I want you to really speak and elaborate a little bit more on that, because I think it's so important for people to get that context.
Well, let's just pick the subject that, this podcast is about marketing. So just imagine this was your presentation and you're going to talk to the audience that we have tonight about the 3 most important things they need to know about marketing. Okay. So remember what Ben said. When I started working with Ben 3 years ago, he had so much information. He had so many great ideas, but we narrowed it down to 3 things. Just 3 things. So it was easy to follow. And I think that's one of the best ways to frame it is, since we're here to talk about marketing and all of these books and seminars that have been done and all the years, Joe, that you've studied these things, I boiled it down to the three most important things that you need to know. So let's start off with number one. And then we talk about number one. Mm-hmm. And one other suggestion is, especially when you're doing an interactive thing like we are, is just like you're interrupting me, not interrupting, but adding things or asking questions.
No, I'm interrupting you.
No, you're not interrupting. We're having a discussion. When you have a conversation, it's a two-way street. Even though we have hundreds of people listening to us, they can still text in, and I'm sure we'll have some other questions coming up. But when we have this back and forth discussion, it's important, before we go on to idea number two, does anybody have any questions about what we covered on idea number one? Because this is a tool in our ultimate speaking system. Don't continue with point two if somebody's brain is stuck on point one and they have something that's holding them back. So let's get any questions out. Good. Okay, now let's go to idea number two, idea number three. And since we're talking about structuring a message, we know we have to have an opening, something that grabs them. Then we have to have our content, and then we have, and this is where people get confused. They confuse a closing and a call to action. And they're completely different things. The call to action, in my experience and opinion, should never be the close. The call to action should precede the close. And the closing is like the bow on a package. It's an impacting story. It's an emotional connection. It's a reinforcement of a key point. It's something that leaves the audience with a wow, not a call to action. Sign up for my course, get my book. No. So let's just say that Ben was going to make a presentation on his book, and he said, you can go to Audible, you can get the book here, you can go to Amazon. Okay, that's his call to action. Then what if he said, on page 116, I tell a story about this man and his wife. And then he uses something from that book as a story to drive home the point. And of course, I'm making this up. I don't know what's on that page, if there's a story about a man or woman in the book. And then if he said, and that man or that woman could be you. Your personality isn't permanent. Your personality isn't permanent. Now go out and make it a great day. That's a closing. That's a wrapping up of his message that he would have given to us if we had more time and we could understand what he was saying in the middle of nowhere. So, but that's one of the ways to structure it, is to make sure you're very clear in your mind. And one of the things Earl Nightingale taught me in the 3 years we spent together, the last 3 years on our planet, that he passed on in 1989. So he moved here in 1986, and I took him fishing a number of times. He was up on our houseboat at Lake Powell. Was he described the idea of moving a message from your mind to the mind of the audience. And if you numbered all of the pieces in your mind and could move them like blocks of a building to the mind of your audience, when you got finished, they would see the same picture that you see in their mind. And that's what you can do to be an even better communicator. Get a clear picture in your mind what your message is and what picture do you want this to create for your listeners. And my picture for you, as you've tuned in to this I Love Marketing meetup, is what Joe started with. I had no idea what he was going to say to me, but that speaking is a learned skill. And it is not about you. It's all about your audience. And it's being you. It's being who you are. not a performance. And, so many times people think when they're going to hire a speech coach, he's going to talk about how to make gestures and how to use your voice and how to use your eyes. That's ridiculous. I mean, most of the people that are listening to this are over 30 years old. You've spent 30 years being you. Mm-hmm. Why would you want to be somebody else? And then if somebody sees you in your business off the stage or off a video, they think, well, who are you? You're not the guy that I talked to or listened to or connected to. And that's what, again, about Dean and Joe. All the time I see you both speaking, you are always the same. You're Joe and Dean. What you see is what you get. And that's so wonderful. And every one of you has that. You have your own you. Just be you.
I think it's important to make this distinction too, that when people think about speaking, that they may think, well, I'm not going to do any public speaking, or I don't speak to audiences or get up on stage and speak. But everything that you're talking about in terms of all the skills that you share with people, the structure, the formatting of your message, the gathering your thoughts of how to convey it, even words like thinking about those building blocks, that no matter what, whether you're speaking in front of a crowd or you're speaking in the boardroom at your company or you're speaking one-on-one in a sales presentation or conversation with somebody, the better you are at being able to organize your thoughts and present them in a way that conveys the real communication to the person, that the only one that matters, the one person that you're talking to. That's really the bigger picture of what it is that you're helping people do. Yeah.
Could I call on one of our members to add to what you just said? Because when you said, I thought of Jennifer Carroll and how the message that she created about prostate cancer from her husband. And I hope Jennifer is still here. I saw her earlier. Jen, are you still on?
Hi, Joel.
Oh, hi. Well, first of all, Jen and I go way back. And she was one of my first coaching clients that I've worked with over these, 15 years maybe?
Plus.
And when you lost your husband to prostate cancer and you wanted to get onto this movement, we worked on this presentation of yours and how it's not all about Phil, it's about them. And just in a short version about getting checked and the coach up in Canada, the hockey coach. So could you share how you were able to do what Dean was saying about structuring and organizing your ideas? Because Jennifer Carroll is a ball of energy. She's going in all different directions. And you found out very quickly that doesn't work in speaking, that your audience needs to be able to follow your message. And that's what you've done with your talk. So take over, Jen.
Definitely resonated with me when you said, you want to have your close, have your wow story after your close. And you helped me
after the call to action. Yes.
The story that I had that I shared with you and we left it to the very end was that I went to visit my son, and my husband passed away of prostate cancer. So I was speaking to people all over the world about having health number one and treating health number one and getting checked. That was my bum, and that was my call to action. It's just go get checked. And so I told the story about how I went to visit my son who plays professional hockey up in Canada. And as I was there, my late husband was very sick at the time, and I was just going up to see Austin and bring him home to see his father for what ended up being the last time. And while I was there, one of his coaches came up to me after one of the games, and he said to me, "Hi, Jen. Gave me his condolences. I hope your husband's doing well. And by the way, what does he have?" And I said, "Prostate cancer." And he said, "Whoa, prostate cancer? Really? I'm sorry. thought he was fighting for his life. And I thought everyone survived prostate cancer. And I said, well, yeah, if you get checked, you can be one of the 97% of the men in the world that survive prostate cancer. But Phil, he wasn't that guy. He didn't really believe in going to the doctor. He didn't like to, he didn't, go in there. He didn't want to go and get checked. And he looked at me and he said, oh, I'm sorry. And I went home and I took Austin home, and he said goodbye to his dad. And sadly, Phil passed away shortly after. And fast forward a couple of months, I was back in Canada, and I was watching my son play another hockey game. And up comes Coach Jeff. And he gave me his condolences. He said, I'm sorry to hear that your husband passed away. It's very tragic. And he said, but I want you to know, I went in and I got checked. And you know me, and you told me to not be afraid. And you told me that you didn't care if I was afraid. And you didn't care if you didn't want to go. And you didn't care about all those things. That you wanted me to have the opportunity to watch my son live out his dream and walk my daughter down the aisle. And that my husband wasn't going to have the chance because he was home and he was dying. And that you looked at me and you pointed your finger in my face and you said, you go in and you bend over and you take it like a man. He said, get it woke me up. And I went in and I saw the doctor and I bent over and I took it like a man. And I need to tell you that today. And you know what? When I was in there and the doctor was putting on my glove, I said, Doc, I'm doing this for a woman and it's not my wife. And it engaged people in laughter, which of course it's a tough subject matter. And I'll tell you, you ask anyone at Genius Network, if I stand up, I'm the bend over and take it like a man gal. And it's not maybe what I thought my legacy would be, but it's okay as long as it gets men bending over and taking it like a man and hopefully save some lives through this shared song. But
Can you see the impact of that closing to put the rapture on this message about prostate cancer and getting checked? It's one thing to say how important it is, but putting it in a story after the call to action is what made Jennifer's closing so powerful. So thank you, sweet lady, for sharing that. And we will talk again. Joe, okay. Let's go back to you.
Oh, thank you. That was great. So in addition to like everything you're talking about, how can people best tailor their speeches and presentations for a virtual environment like we're doing right now?
Oh, well, what is our time frame? Can I go? I have an 8-minute little presentation I put together on virtual presentations that they might like to see. Since so many people on this call know me from Genius Network using visuals, and I haven't used any visuals, I have a little short presentation that would be very helpful on virtual presentations.
Well, I mean, if I say no to that, everyone's going to hate Dean Jackson. So how do we?
What? Wait a minute now.
Yeah, how do we not do that? So yeah, go for it. Let's
go for it. All right, let me share my screen, and this should be set up. Let's see if we get this right. There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Look, you're all prepared for this. I mean,
well, I don't know that I heard from a speaker that was important. So what I wanted to put together for your members was just a couple of thoughts on virtual communications, because that's what we're doing now. And that means videos, webinars, podcasts, and Zoom calls. And as we know, all of this started with COVID-19, and now we've got the mask. Now, I don't know if this is one of our Genius Network members or if this guy is. I know he is. I think that's John Checky. But in this little 8-minute or so presentation, you're going to know how you can be more effective virtually. You're going to have very doable ideas you can use immediately. And hopefully you're going to feel confident, excited in any virtual setting. Dean, do you remember what I just did?
Amen. Look at
know, have, feel.
Yes.
Well, times have changed. Now, Dean, I know you love collecting money. You've used Visa, MasterCard, but now, of course, we've had to use toilet paper. And this is all part of the new normal. So virtual communications is not going to go away when COVID-19 is defeated. So let's look at the speaker's perspective. As you're watching this interview, think about when you have to do a virtual presentation. It could be a one-on-one like this picture that you're seeing here, but whatever it is, there's a limited connection with the audience. It is difficult to read and feel as opposed to a live event where you can see a smile, a laugh, or sitting up, cheering, clapping, energy. Or if you're seeing something like this, you know you're in trouble. So one of the things that can help you is avoid distractions. I call them the 3 Ps. That's people, phone, and pets. Anything that your eyes see when you're on a virtual call, your brain will think about. So you want to avoid distracting views. Let's just say a cat walked past the screen right now in a box. If you're watching your screen, you cannot help but think about that cat. Third idea, people come at different times and leave at different times. When you are at a live event starting at 3 in the afternoon, 90% of the people are going to be in the room and nobody's going to leave before it's over. So because you don't know when they come or they go, maybe in the beginning you covered some important things. You could say things like, as we discussed earlier, or let's review some of the points that you heard in the beginning. Or remember earlier we discussed those 3 most important things about speaking. Now, also because they can leave early, they might miss your call to action and your closing. So notice on the screen it says, open with your close. Tell them in the beginning where you're going with this. Remember, all of these ideas are in our system. Or a little later, you're going to have an opportunity to invest in the system. Okay, so that's your perspective as a speaker. Now let's think of the audience's perspective. It's free, just like this call. I mean, you didn't pay anything to be here. So we don't know when you're coming, when you're going. And as a result, because there's no real financial commitment, people start to multitask. And Joe, SurveyMonkey, I know you've used them a lot. They did a study on virtual calls recently and found 64% are doing other work while on a virtual call. 56% are eating, or get this, Dean, or making food while they're on a virtual call. 44% are texting, 43% are on social media, and 21% are actually buying something online that has nothing to do with what you're talking about. And the third thing to think of from the audience's perspective is it's really not that important. They can dress casual, which means they can be in their pajamas. So what are the solutions? Let me give you a couple of very simple things you can do as part of a plan, a strategy, and just requires very little effort on your part. First is your mindset. Have a positive expectancy every time you do a virtual presentation and use TLA. TLA is an acronym. Think like your audience. Think like your audience. Hot tip. Dress like it was a live event. So I don't have a t-shirt on. I have a more formal dress shirt like I would do at Genius Network. Then we need some equipment. Obviously, you need a camera, microphone, lighting, green screen. Hot tip. Set your camera 3 to 4 inches above your eye level. So you're looking up, not looking down. Simple thing. And then always look at the camera. Don't look at the screen. And if you use a green screen like I have, keep it simple. You don't want to put a big cityscape like this. People are thinking, is that New York or is that Chicago? Or is that the Chrysler building? Or they're not listening to your message. And your message is the king. Your message is what it's all about. And we said earlier, remember these 3 things. Meet your audience's needs, overcome their fears, and reinforce their victories. And then set the hook early. This is a hot tip. I'm a serious fisherman, bass fisherman, and when you get a bite, you got to set the hook. That means explain your call to action and use hooks. The nightly news does this every night. If you watch Lester Holt, he says things like this. So tonight in our broadcast, you're going to find out how did $1 million fall into a schoolyard? And what player got a $100 million contract? And how could it be 92 one day and then it's going to snow the next day? Stay tuned for those stories and a lot more.
Still ahead.
And then keep them short and snappy. Hot tip. Act, don't react. If there's some kind of a lack of connection or technical details or not everybody shows up, don't react. One other hot tip, and this is a real important, this will make the whole evening worthwhile. Whenever you do a presentation, live or virtual, talk only to one person, and their name is you. You can be amazing virtually. Now go out and speak. Virtual is here to stay. Get even better at it. And that should be just about 8 minutes.
Wow, that was great. What do you think of that, Dean?
I'm Joel Weldon, and that's the news.
Well, I know you're so good at seeding presentations. And, you know, when you look at the news, they've got to keep you on for that 30 minutes. So they always do something. Whether you hear what Donald Trump said, or whether you see what happened in New York, you won't believe this. Stay tuned.
So many times they'll get that all the way through. Tonight, coming up, still ahead, next.
Well, this proves the part that you need a system, that you need an organized way to do things, that speaking effectively is a learned skill. And just like any skill, it just takes time, effort, and energy, like Ben said. But if you have the right tools, and that's really what I'm in the business of creating, is the right tools and the coaching to do it, because the system saves you so much. And I just love that acronym. It saves you stress, time, energy, and money.
Yeah.
And you need a coach too, because sometimes you're so close to something, you can't see what you're doing, or you don't hear what you're saying. And that's one thing in working with all of our Genius Network members, and so many. John Checky out there is one of our clients, and of course, Jennifer and Ben and Paul Culligan. So it's just little things that can make the difference. And think about this belief that if you make the wrong presentation, it can cost you big time.
Mm-hmm.
So every presentation you make is important. You don't want to make a bad one. You want to make them better and better. Okay, turn it back to you, Dean.
I like it.
Well, let me say this. I've got a couple more questions. If
Okay.
you Dean, then let's do Q&A with the audience, and we'll go for about another 27 minutes. If anyone needs to hop off, that you're just going to miss the very best stuff.
Okay.
You know, with Genius Recovery, which is my passion project, you know, to change the global conversation about how people view and treat addicts with compassion instead of judgment, find the best forms of treatment that have efficacy, and share that with the world. That's my statement. That's what we talk about. And we have geniusrecovery.org. So it's an educational platform, links to meetings, all these virtual things that you can participate in if you or anyone you know struggling with addiction. That's just there as a resource. So, and then we have Genius Network. And Genius Network is, I think any problem in the world can be solved with the right Genius Network. So it's a bunch of industry transformers, people like you, that are amazing and come and share skills and capabilities. Ultimately, what I try to do is connect people with ideas, connect people with other people. It's all about connections. So what does connection mean to you, Joel, both personally and in a professional speaking context? Because, you know, when you have a connection with someone, that's when you get clients. That's how you make the biggest difference, you know, in their lives. So what's connection mean to you?
Well, I think it goes back to that premise that I mentioned too, that it's not about you, that the connection really is about them. Like with Jennifer Carroll, the connection that I've had with Jennifer over the years, and going through this with Phil and my wife Judy and our daughters involved with her family over these years. This wasn't about, oh, maybe I can get her to hire me to be her speech coach. It was really about helping her in that difficult struggle, or seeing how some of the ideas in our ultimate speaking system could help her, and then sharing them with her. So I think that's what I've learned in the 6 years of being in Genius Network is you always open with setting the tone about giving. And Joe, how do you say that quote? The world gives to the giver and takes from the taker. Say that exactly the way you say it every time.
Yeah, life gives to the giver and takes from the taker.
Yes, right. Now look how well prepared he is for that. Terrific.
Well,
And
you can get this book.
And that's so true. I think that's what connection is all about. Is sure we all have a self-interest. We all need to do business. We all need income, but people sense where your heart is. And that's what I sensed the day that Martin Howey 6.5 years ago forced me to come and see you in Tempe, Arizona. In 5 minutes, I realized this guy wants to help people. And I just felt that immediate connection. Even though I didn't know anything about marketing or any of the things that you were doing, and little would I have imagined that I would become such a raving fan of Genius Network all of these years later. At a time when most people my age are hanging it up. I mean, my gosh, you said I'm the oldest member. Genius, I feel like a kid in the candy store with all these great ideas you expose us to. So that's what connection is about.
No, thank you. You know, and you take like Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People. Well, what Dale Carnegie was a speaker. Mm-hmm. And Dale Carnegie actually wrote books on, he wrote Stop Worrying and Start Living, which is another great book. And then he wrote a book on speaking. And one of the things that Dan Sullivan says, and you've actually been Dan Sullivan's speaking coach.
Yes. Dan made a great video for me on how much it helped him as a writer, because just like Dean said, this is going to help you in your writing as well. And that was what Dan Sullivan said. He got so much out of the coaching that we did together, but it helped him become so much better of a writer, because it's the same process. A book or an article is not about you. It's about your reader. How does this help them?
Yeah, well, here's the thing, and I don't think this is actually a stretch. I think one of the reasons why, because I've never seen you in a bad mood, even though I know you've had very challenging times. What I didn't bring up here is that Joel went to the dentist, and got some sort of, what happened? Like you literally had heart surgery 2.5 months ago. How long ago was it?
March 18th.
March 18th. During the start of all of this, he literally got an infection at going to a dentist for a teeth cleaning, right?
Yes. I picked up a dental infection, and it destroyed my heart valve and a main artery. And I was in the hospital 6 weeks. I was in the best shape of my life. I've never been sick, no problems. And I just had no energy. And my secretary forced me to go and check it out. And they sent me right to the hospital. And it took 3 weeks to kill that infection before they could do the surgery. But, everything turned out great. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience, and the people I met, and able to add good things. And that's all I kept thinking about. That's good. Something good is going to happen from this. There's nothing I could do to change it. It was what it was. But, now I look back on it, and it was one of the highlights of this year. And I'm still back doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. Now this is what you call an absolutely insane human right here. He's so positive, right? So, that being said, Joel, what I was going to say was, and then you literally went water skiing 2 months after you had heart surgery.
Yes.
And you're 78 years old.
Yes.
And, it is massively inspiring. And secondly, I think a lot of your positive attitude, to go back to Dan Sullivan, he says people die. Obviously people can have accidents, people can get sick. He goes, when people die, it's because they have no friends, no purpose, and no money. And I think your speaking and all of the people that you've shared with, all of the friends that you've developed in the process of doing this, when you put yourself in the role of being a teacher, I'll tell you, like left to my own devices, I don't want to go out and like just meet people, even though everyone thinks, oh, you're the connection guy. I mean, I'm very curious about humans. I mean, I love learning and meeting interesting people. It's just the teacher role, the interviewer role, asking people questions is what has created a process for me to go out and actually develop a lot of relationships, which now people know me as, but they think, oh yeah, Joe just is this connector guy. It's simply because I'm looking for problems that I have that I want to ask the people that have solutions to them. So the point I'm making here is the whole process of being a better communicator isn't just a money thing. I mean, it isn't just sell your products and services. I mean, it's your life. And I swear, I think your life is a function of how much you have put yourself into a role of being an encourager and a teacher to other people. And you live that message. I mean, I've spent so much time around you. I mean, even with like incredibly challenging times, you just have tapped into this reservoir of knowledge that has come through this craft that you're talking about right now. So, you know, if people want more friends, if they want more money, I mean, speaking is a vehicle in order to do it. So I think it's a very important thing. And what me and Dean have said many times, I mean, we've encouraged so many people to start podcasts because we're like, look, if you just do a podcast, you're going to be out there speaking to people, teaching things, interviewing people. The strategic byproducts that are going to come out of it are really valuable. I mean, we're still trying to find the audio where we're trying to talk Tim Ferriss into doing a podcast when we were interviewing him probably 10 years ago, because we've interviewed Tim several times on our show. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do a podcast. I don't know if that's a good idea. Now he has one of the biggest podcasts in the world, right? Because he just really put a lot of effort into that thing. And so anyway, the point is, I got one more thing for you, and then I'll ask you to tell people how to get your program. Then we'll do Q&A. So if this is a question I have written down, if you were to prescribe one important action step that people would take with everything we've talked about, what would it be?
If we've narrowed this down to just one thing.
Yep, one thing. What would be an action step?
To make your message about your audience and not you.
Okay, great. Dean, you want to say anything?
I think that's great. Let's open it up for questions.
Okay. Joel, why don't you talk about your program first, because some of the questions may be contained within your program. So what do you sell? How do people get help from you?
Okay, well, one of the things that, based on meeting you, created a complete online system of over 200 videos now, and of audios and printed materials. And what the purpose of it is to identify all of these tools of a system: how to organize your ideas, how to open, how to close, how to write an introduction. All the things that we've been talking about are available in printed material, on audios, and in videos. And it's a one-time investment. Once you're in, you never pay another penny. So when I first started the Genius Network, I had, I think, 4 or 5 videos. Now there's over 200, and they've never paid another penny. So there's no recurring investment. And normally it's a $29.97 program. And we have a new program called Quick Start, which is a way to write a complete message in under 3 hours, start to finish, using all of these simple tools in an online course. And that's also included in the Ultimate Speaking System. And we're going to make that available for $1,500 for your people. Now, I think Eunice asked for some link to our website page where they can go. Or Jenny, do we know how to do that? Or Gina? And that might be helpful just while I'm mentioning this.
Oh, okay. So they set up ilovemarketing.com/speak, SPEAK. ilovemarketing.com/speak. So just go there.
And can we show what that is? And I can just show you quickly what they can get.
Yeah.
And everything is guaranteed. It's 100%. If you're not thrilled, you're going to get every penny.
He's doing better. We'll get our walk in before the rain gets here.
Who's that talking?
Ooh.
Let me see. I'm going to try to share my screen here in a moment. So bear
You
with
share Paul Colligan's screen. He's holding up the cover of the program right there.
Oh, my buddy Paul. The best podcast man there is in the world.
Ah.
Okay, where is this? Where is this? I'm on this computer that's not even mine. So here we go.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, so that's what you'd see on the landing page. And I think if we scroll down, yeah, so that shows all the tools that are available. And then there's a special code for I Love Marketing. And instead of like, it's almost $4,000, that's what it is on the website, $39.94. And anybody on our show tonight or today gets it for $1,500. And we can even make payments if that's a problem. So we can do that. I don't know if that can be done on the site. And then we also have coaching available. And I have 3 certified coaches, as well as I take on some new clients. I only have a few spots open for this summer. So I have time to work with people, especially on important presentations. And that's a $3,900 investment for the coaches or $7,900 for me one time. And we have no time limit on that. So you don't use up the hours or anything like that. Once you're in and I'm hired by you, as like Ben has hired me and Jennifer Carroll and John Checky, once you have me, you've got me. So anytime you're working on a presentation, you can just call and say, Joel, help me with the introduction, help me with my visuals. I need to add some humor. Do you have a funny story we could add here? So all of that is part of the coaching. And normally that's a $10,000 investment, but our Genius Network members save $2,100 and the same on our coaches. But you need to think of a couple of things. That you need a system. You need some way to organize your ideas on speaking. And you need somebody to help guide you that's been there before. And I think we have, 170 members of Genius Network that have invested in my coaching and this system over the last 6 years. And how to use humor. That's another thing that becomes a very important part of a message. And that's something that we can help you do, even if you're not funny. How to add humor when you're not funny. So that basically is the offer. And for $1,500, that should be a no-brainer. If you're serious about wanting to be an expert, the fastest way to get there is to use speaking and then make your message about your audience, get yourself out of the way, and then use a system to save you stress, time, energy, and money.
Love it. You know what, Joel? Here's the thing, too, because there's a question from Andy that wrote, Joe, if I buy your book, The Average Joe's Marketing Book, can I get a V-neck Genius Network t-shirt? Well, we don't have V-necks. We just have regular t-shirts. We can send but here's what I'm going to do, because we don't even – the book's not out yet. This is a pre-release book.
Oh.
We've given this to Genius Network members, but I just came up with an idea. Buy Joel's course. I will send you the physical version of The Average Joe's Marketing Book, which is not out yet. And I'll send you a physical copy of Life Gives to the Giver, which you can also get at joesfreebook.com, the downloadable version. And I'll even send you the addiction book that me and Anna David, who's on the line with us right now, wrote, The Miracle Morning. Anna was a guest with us at the last meeting. We did an awesome one, and you have to listen to that podcast with Anna. And Anna has actually worked with Joel before. And Anna, you're welcome to come on and say something in a minute if you'd like to. Hold on, before Anna speaks. What I want to say is that if anyone buys Joel's course, we'll send you a t-shirt, either Kiss Me I'm a Genius or a regular Genius Network one. These only go to Genius Network members. They're awesome. And if you're a Genius Network member, we'll send you another one, of course. And we'll send you my 3 books. I'll just do that for free. I'll just include it in the bundle. If anyone that buys, well, everyone is going to buy Joel's course, because God knows we don't want your life to suck. And if you don't have this training, I mean, yeah. So let's do that. So Anna, what would you want to say anything? Unmute yourself, darling.
Hi.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, this has been great. And yeah, when I did the annual event, Joel was so helpful. And what I wanted to add is if speaking is the best way to become an expert, writing a book is the second best way, if not the first best way, along with speaking. And I have a book out. Today is the release day for Make Your Mess Your Memoir. And it's all about that. And, I publish people's books, but it is insane. It has been, can I swear, such a shit show, this release. Like the best and the worst. Like I got booked to go on Good Morning America. The best. The book's not available on paperback. The worst. This guy, Jeff Garlin on Seinfeld, heard about it and is now posting about it. The best. I didn't sleep all night because, anyway, it's just, it's everything is highs and lows, just like addiction. And I'm a little bit frenetic right now, so I apologize if I'm acting like a lunatic, but Joe knows all about that.
Yeah.
But yes, I know that for me, I was just like a girl who did a lot of cocaine. I got sober. I wrote a book about it. And suddenly I was on the Today Show talking about as an addiction expert. And I'm like, I don't have a degree. And they're like, you don't need a degree. You have a book. So I have seen firsthand, and Dean knows this, and a lot of people on the call know all about this.
Yeah. Well, the point is get whatever your message is, whatever you're communicating, the more effective you can put it out there, the better. And it's funny, I'm looking at how shiny my head is. I forgot to put my makeup on tonight. But look.
It's not about you, Joe.
It's true. It's true. Anything that you have, you're going to accelerate it by utilizing what Joel has talked about tonight. So who has a question for Joel? If you have a question, either type it in the chat or just speak up. And this is your opportunity to ask Joel any question you would like. So go for it.
Joel, I have a question about how often you should be practicing in between speaking. How long would you say that should be in between your live performances?
Okay, so the question about practice. I don't recommend practicing what most people would think of as practice. I think the best practice is quietly thinking about your audience, about your message, and how that message is going to help them meet their needs, overcome their fears, reinforce their victories, and get yourself out of the way. And the reason I don't recommend practicing it is the reason I don't recommend practicing it and memorize the reason. Okay, so what am I doing? I've memorized something. I'm trying to think of that next word. And I just went blank. And you see that so often. So my suggestion, if you accept the premise, the belief that speaking publicly is a private conversation that a number of people hear at the same time. So if you and I had dinner, would we need to practice what we're going to talk about at dinner? No, we would need to know, okay, I want to ask you about the trip that you had to XYZ. I want to ask you about the kids, and I want to see about your book. So I made a mental note. Those are the three things we're going to talk about tonight. I don't need to think about what words to use. You have been speaking your whole life. So that's, to me, the best way to practice. And as a result, you should never give the same presentation twice because you don't have the same audience every time. It's about that audience, that day, on that podcast, that webinar, that live event, and no one else. And Joe knows when we talked about him speaking at the National Speakers Association, how important it is to customize it to the audience you're talking to. And that's not something you memorize. So I know that might not be the answer you're looking for, but practicing something mentally and seeing it clearly in your mind is one of the best ways that you can do it. There are a few people that I've worked with that can memorize a talk and deliver it effectively. And I can count them on one hand. It's not something most people can do, and therefore it's not necessary. And you don't want it to sound like a talk that's canned. It's a conversation. So hopefully that'll answer that question for you.
Thank you for answering in the honesty.
Yeah, Joel, I want to say something. You helped me with that presentation I was given at National Speakers Association. So we did it at the headquarters here, which actually is located in Tempe, Arizona. And I never even prepared that presentation. I talked about things I've spoken about before, but you introduced me. You helped me organize it, and it was the highest rated speech in NSA's history at their headquarters there. And I don't even consider myself a public speaker. I just think of me as this marketing guy that happens to speak, and I run, a pretty amazing group, right? What I think we should do for everyone that gets your package is, because I've never distributed that talk, but someone here is asking, like, what's a great introduction? Well, the best introduction is you showing the model of doing an introduction. Like, if anyone gets Joel's program, you'll have to let us know that you got it so that we know.
Well, I'll let you know, everybody. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll get you everybody.
Jenny put in here, ilovemarketing.com/speak, and a 50% off coupon of the course. Use the code ILM, as in I Love Marketing, ILM, to get the course. But let's include the NSA presentation that I did with you introducing me and people seeing how I did it, because it literally got all, like, I think 4 stars or whatever they rated on different things, and it was across the board. And I was like blown away, because I mean, had you not helped me with that, there's no way in hell I could have done it. So it's not just even what you talk about, it's all these other things that are so important. And I mean, I tell people all the time, you're going to be, when I tell people to hire Joel in Genius Network, because I've told so many people in Genius Network, like, I got something to sell. It's like, hire Joel. Just trust me on this. Even if you're not a public speaker, it's going to help you in all these other areas because of what he does. You're going to use it for the rest of your life. So that's what I want to point out. All right. Who has another question for Joel?
I have a question.
I have.
Let's go with you first, and then we'll
okay. Mike Lamb, I'm down in Gold Canyon, Arizona, right down the street from you.
Oh, hey, Mike.
And my question for this is, first of all, it's a great shot in the arm. So thank you. Just amazing.
You're welcome.
My question for Joel, twofold. Number one, have the prices for new speakers gone up? And is there a pricing range for doing virtual speaking?
Yes and yes. So there's been a big change. Well, first of all, there are no more meetings. So there are no more live events. I mean, I'm sure there are some somewhere, but for most practical purposes in the US and Canada, that's non-existent. So as a result, the fees for virtual presentations are generally substantially lower. And I think it's going to be part of our new normal, that in many of the clients that I've worked with that have gone to virtual presentations have seen an increase in attendance, an increase in positive feedback, no travel time away from their families, and a much more simplified experience. So I don't know what's going to happen, obviously, in the future, but obviously the virtual presentations do not command the same fees as a live presentation. Mainly because if you hired me to come and speak, it's a 2-day event. I've got to travel from Phoenix, go to San Francisco, come back that night. If we do a virtual presentation, we're going to spend 2 hours today, and I'm sitting here in my office with no travel time. Total investment, 2 hours, not 2 days. So yes, there's a difference. But you need to think, most of the people that are on I Love Marketing are using speaking to grow your business. The income that you would generate, there should be no relevancy to a fee. You should be using speaking to position you as an expert, to sell the products, services, and ideas that your company has, and elevate yourself to that expertise status, which is what speaking does. And then, as Anna said, and then having a book. And using the book, as Joe has used, not to make money on the royalties, but to establish that expertise position. So
that's
hopefully,
coming.
Mr. Lamb, that answers your question.
It does. That's coming. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then I have a couple that are written up here, but who was next? It was
Patricia. Hey, Joe.
Hi,
Hey,
Patricia.
guys. This is Patricia Martin. I'm actually in East Mesa, so I'm in the Valley as well. So thank you, Joe, for putting this together. It's like every time I'm here, I feel like I won the lottery. But I wanted to ask, I am super nervous because I am applying to speak at TED Talks Scottsdale. I'm already on the committee. And so on a committee that isn't going to compromise my ability to apply. So my question is, I have all kinds of stories, what people tell me from being, high school dropout, teenage mom, migrant farm worker. And I am trying to figure out what we would recommend is the best, like, how do you pull out the best story for your best speaking engagement when you feel like you have so much to share? Like, how do you narrow that down aside from, okay, the audience, women, but how do you pull that out of yourself? I guess
That's a great question. Well, one of the things to think of with any personal story or any story of any kind is you always want to open with the point of the story. How many times have you listened to a speaker tell a story and you're thinking to yourself, where is this going? What is this about? What does this have to do with me? But if you said something like this, I know as you're sitting there, you might be concerned about your future. Maybe you don't have an education. Maybe you're a single parent raising a child all alone and a shortage of money. You maybe came from another country where English is a second language. And these could be difficult challenges. But I would like to share a story with you to prove that no matter what the challenges you face are, there are answers to every one of those challenges. And as a matter of fact, the three things I just mentioned all happened to me. So just imagine that you're 16 years old and you're pregnant. Now, if you're a man, just imagine a woman 16 years old. You're not pregnant as a man. Okay, so what did I just do? I'm telling your story, and I don't know your story, but you gave me a couple of little points in the beginning. But notice who was pregnant as a teenager. It wasn't, I was pregnant at 16. Imagine you're 16 and you're pregnant. That's putting your audience in the story. That's making it about them, not you. So think of the point that you're trying to make and what story or information do you have that illustrates that point. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I know that you have a closing. I have 22 words to close with, Joe, when we're done. So if you just say, Joel, what are your last words? Because remember, the call to action is never the close.
You got it. I'm trying to find the question. Let me see, because Gina had posted another one, but okay. Paul asked, how do you research your audience ahead of a keynote to speak to each person, even if you're on stage, if you're on stage or a stadium? So how do you research your audience ahead of a keynote?
Okay. Well, that's one of the tools in our system, but we have a whole series of questions to ask. But as an example, if I was going to try to make the point, like I mentioned to Rebecca, tell the purpose of your story. What's the point of the story? So let's say the point of what I'm going to share with you is how important enthusiasm is. So let's say the audience was a Genius Network audience. And Joe, I'm going to have you make believe I'm the guest speaker, and I want to customize it to this audience. And one of my stories is about enthusiasm. So one of my questions for my client, which is Joe Polish, Joe, is there a member of Genius Network, a man or woman, that just is so enthusiastic and bubbly all the time? Is there somebody that comes to mind that would fit that description?
Well,
who would you say?
Jason Fladlin, Jennifer Carroll.
Okay, Jennifer Carroll and Jason Fladlin. Okay, so now I have two names. Then I would call up Tim Paulson. Tim, I'm going to tell a story about enthusiasm. And I checked around, and I don't really know these people, but Jason Fladlin and Jennifer Carroll were meant. Would you say they're oh my gosh, they're off the charts. Great people. Okay, now, of course, Jennifer Carroll and Jason Fladlin are both clients of mine, so I know them very well. So now I've got the people. So here's how you customize a keynote or any kind of presentation. So we were talking earlier about how important it is to be excited about what you're doing. Now, there are some people who have lots of enthusiasm. As a matter of fact, if you took like Jennifer Carroll and Jason Fladlin, I mean, they're just like off the charts enthusiastic. Matter of fact, if Jason or Jennifer was the captain of the Titanic, they would have said, we're just stopping for ice. I mean, that's the kind of enthusiasm they have. Now, there's an example of how you can use the name of somebody and make a point. Now, even if somebody doesn't know Jason or Jennifer, we set them up as being enthusiastic. Mm-hmm. So asking questions, and there's a whole set of tools on how to customize your message and find out about your audience before you speak, virtual or live. All right, next question.
I was thinking enthusiasm. I should just get Robin Farmian just to say anything.
Oh yeah, Robin up. Yeah, Robin would be great.
Can you like not be enthusiastic? Just say something?
No, I have two states of being. I'm either like extremely or I'm asleep.
That is awesome.
I can remember the cab ride we shared at the annual event in California. And I thought, who is this woman? You were just so enthusiastic. So, Robin, you definitely would have said to the passengers, we're just stopping for ice.
Yeah, I would have started a company while doing it.
Okay.
Who else? We'll take one or two more questions, and then we will wrap up, everyone.
Hey, Joe, I've got a question.
Yep.
So, Joel, so going back to the communicator, it seems like everything we do, even if it's a sales letter or talking about a product or something, video sells. Will your course help me to really dial in the what I want to speak about and what I want to convey?
Oh yeah, that's what this Quick Start does. It really helps you focus on the content that you have, and then all the other tools help you structure how to tell your personal story and make it about your audience. I mean, this is all part of the system, Dave. And just as a name dropping, Vern Harnish, who gets $50,000 a talk, founder of EO, a very well-known entrepreneur and speaker, hired me a couple of years ago to help him on his personal story. He's told this story for 30 years. And I rewrote the story based on the tools in the system. And he called me a few months ago. He said, I have the most important presentation of my life coming up, and I'm going to tell that story. And he wrote me afterwards, and he said he never had a reaction in the 30 years he's told that story like he did when we just flipped the story and made it about the audience instead of about Vern. And the story never changed, but the audience could feel the experience. And that's a tool. That's a tweak. I didn't create a new story. I didn't give them a new story. We just tweaked it. And that's why I love that quote of Joe's, that little hinges swing big doors. We're not talking about big changes. Little things make such a difference, like know, have, feel, like even, before, more, and better. Little things like that.
Yeah,
so, yes, this will all help you, Dave.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. The original, the person quoted with "little hinges swing big doors" is, what is his name, Dean?
I don't remember.
I thought it was Joe Polish.
W. Clement Stone. W. Clement Stone.
Yes, exactly. W. Clement Stone.
Oh, is it W. Clement Stone?
Yep, that's right.
Thank you, Craig.
Yep. Thank you. Yep. No, by the way, I like, if there's ever anything that I heard from someone, I always, will give them credit, even if they're not famous. If I can always remember why, where things came from. So I appreciate it. And it is true though. Little hinges do swing big ass doors. Sometimes little doors. All right. So there's a question here. Let me find it from Brian. So when sharing with people the price at the end, I was taught to shut up and not say anything after presenting price, how to call to action. That's really more in a one-on-one sales thing where you actually have that. In terms of doing it in front of, there's a lot of different methods that people have used. I mean, even I had the highest close of giving a presentation in 2011 at Dan Kennedy's, summit. And then Robin Robbins, who's been a genius, she's the one that literally gave me the idea to start Genius Network when she was consulting with me years ago. She ended up beating my close. But I literally did that close with a video sales letter. I think I'm the first person that ever played a video sales letter at the end of my presentation and came up with an elf robotic method of how to close from stage. I want to ask you your opinion on that. I do want to say though, if anyone wants to watch that presentation, all you need to do is go to ilovemarketing.com, type in like Dan Kennedy or Gary Halbert, because my presentation was, I'll ask Gina just to put it in the chat. It was literally what I learned from Gary Halbert, and I closed at the end. But there's a lot of different ways that people close and ask for money. So what would you say to that, Joel?
Well, I think that what you're saying is that old sales technique. Whenever you ask a closing question, shut up. Mm-hmm. And, but if we're having a conversation with the audience and you're talking about a product or service or an investment, now, because our format for this was a little different, but many times when I'm doing a webinar, in my very opening, I would mention very quickly under the have, one of the things you'll have is an opportunity to get the entire Ultimate Speaking System for only $1,500. It's normally a $4,000 program, but I'll tell you more about that later. And I like to get that close right out in the beginning, and then near the end, not the ending of the message, because that's the close, but the call to action. I mentioned earlier about the Ultimate Speaking System being only a $1,500 investment. And then I would talk about it. So I don't know if you have to think about once you close, never saying anything else, but we tried to make it easy where you could go to the website and you have the link if you can follow it up. And then most important though, on the closing and the call to action, keep them separate. Don't ever end with get my book, sign up for my mastermind group, join our company, buy this product. You're going to love it. Close with something like Jennifer Carroll did. Get checked. Take it like a man. I mean, when I saw that in front of a live audience, Joe, the impact was so powerful. That was the summary of what she was saying.
Yeah. No, thank you. So there's one other one that I'll do, and then we'll wrap up. So okay. Charlie had posted, I had one main pressing question about speaking. It has haunted me for my whole life. What do I do with my hands? I'm just going to demonstrate what I think you should do with your hands if you're on a virtual meeting like this. So here's my hands, right? You just kind of go like that constantly. So it'll just freak people. I'm kidding. So Joel, what do you actually do with your hands?
Okay, I don't even think about it. So here would be the suggestion. Now, without knowing what he's doing with his hands, now, if you're doing something like this, that could be, especially on a virtual call, where we know when you move your hands, it changes the focus of the camera. It can be very distracting. If you can't control that, put that in the opening. Say, one of the things I tend to use my hands, and I'm an Italian background. Let's say if you're Italian, and Italians use their hands. Please don't let them distract you. I'm going to try to keep them under control, but if they get in the way, let's focus on the ideas, not my hands. Just even bringing it up can make it go away. But again, be you. If you are a person of gestures, then use them as you would normally use them. Because if you try to act, I mean, just think about what an actor is. An actor is becoming somebody they are not. And I don't, this is your show, Joe and Dean, but I know so many people that love this guy because he's Joe Polish. He's Joe Polish all the time. He's not putting on an act at a meeting for Genius Network members. He's not putting on an act when he goes to the National Speakers Association. He's Joe Polish. And Dean Jackson is Dean Jackson. And that's the key. And if he happens to use his hands in a weird way, then let's figure out a way to make that disappear, but let him use his hands. Be you. There's no one else like you.
No, thank you. And by the way, Joel, I want to ask you before we wrap, if there's any other topics or any questions that we did not ask you that we should have asked you that you'd like to speak to.
Well, I think you've asked about everything, except you could ask me, what are the 22 words you want to end this message with?
Line. I've been waiting for.
Okay, Dean, did you have a question for me, Dean?
I've been sitting here with my pencil ready, and I've been waiting for Joe to say, Dean, do you have anything else to say? And I'm going to say, I've been waiting for 20 minutes for two things. Number one, Joel, you mentioned that you wore a nice shirt, like you were doing a live event, but you didn't mention whether you're wearing pants for virtuals.
No, I'm not wearing pants. I have shorts on.
There you go. And that could be your little secret to the audience.
Yes, that's true. I'll tell you the truth.
Or not, you're wearing pants. Keep them guessing. But then the second thing is,
what was the second question? I wonder.
These 22 words. We've been sitting waiting for these 22 words.
Well, if you were to summarize everything you've invested in 2 hours and 15 minutes on this I Love Marketing meetup call, and everything it's taken me 46 years to learn about speaking, here it is in 22 words. It's on page 148 of your printed toolbox, and you're going to get, if you invest in the program, we're going to send you this printed toolbox. You're going to get a can of success. That's all part of the program. But on page 148, here's a summary of everything in 22 words. Speak to your audience about what they need in an organized way they can follow, and get yourself out of the way. And when you do that, you will become an even better speaker. It's been an honor and a privilege to be with you this afternoon and evening. And thank you, Joe and Dean, for the opportunity.
You know what? Thank you so much. And here's what I want to do is, some of you I know printed out the AHA page. I failed to tell people to do this. If anyone wrote it down, go ahead and take a minute. Thank you. Write down what your ahas were. Let's take a minute to do that. And let me mention that if anyone gets Joel's program, this is not an affiliate thing. Me and Dean are not keeping a penny of that. When I said I'll include my books, I literally will pay for my books and contribute them. I will contribute the NSA speech. I will contribute the t-shirts. The reason I think people should get paid for their wisdom. Also, I want to let everyone know, me and Dean have spent no less than $100,000 a year with all of the things we do related to the website, the production, everything for the I Love Marketing podcast. We've been doing it for 10 years. So that means out of pocket, we've spent $1 million putting out content for free. We don't take sponsorships. We'll occasionally talk about programs. Most of the things that we will promote someone's books, we don't keep any of those that money. We endorse. We're not beholden to anyone. We don't have to pitch something because we're going to get paid half the money. We could monetize this in much greater ways. We don't. We really put this stuff out there to be helpful to people. So if you find this useful, buy Joel's program because he's an amazing guy. He's very helpful. and I know it'll help your life. If you really get a lot out of what we're doing with I Love Marketing, go to get one of Dean's programs, or make a contribution to Genius Recovery, which is our foundation. So there's, and if you're not able to do any of that, we hope you take this and you share it with other business owners that can use it, because a lot of people are struggling right now. And we hope that you take what you learned tonight, you put it into action, and you go and build your mission, your business, whatever it is that you're doing. And it helps it helps people. And that's what we're really doing this for. And we really enjoy it, because we really like helping a lot of people. And yeah, we all have businesses too that we're doing, but seriously, like me and Dean do this as much so that we can learn as we can to help people, because one of the best ways to learn anything is to teach it to other people. I mean, that's the most accelerated way to learn. And so I just wanted to say that. Dean, is there any Dave, Charlie, anything else you guys want to share before we wrap up? Or
I want to acknowledge that all the people, like whenever people register, we've been collecting questions, we've been collecting all these things. And I'm going to say that Joe and I will do a special meetup group where we'll do nothing but answer questions. We'll do nothing but answer the questions that we've had, and maybe even bring people in live like that, because we appreciate all you guys coming in.
And by the way, like, I'm looking on the screen here, Dorina, if you're even conscious, what time is it in Romania right now? My dear friend Dorina in Romania.
Hi, it's 3:20 a.m.
3:20 a.m. from Romania. I mean, that's like a commitment. So thank you.
Thank you for doing this. It's worth waking up middle of the night just to watch this.
Right.
It's awesome.
I love it. Yeah, we had Raheen, who was in Pakistan, who had to get off at 4 a.m. because it was just too late for him. I mean, it's all over the world. And then the amount of people that will listen to this will be tens of thousands of people. Will listen to this. And so we will put this out. And like what I was saying earlier, well, the $1 million that me and Dean have invested in putting this out there are hundreds of episodes that are all free. Best education out there. I think we give away more stuff for free than what most people ever charge for. And I hope you find that valuable, and I hope you tell other people about it. And we will put this entire recording up with Joel will be an episode. We'll probably put the video up on the YouTube channel. And so that sort of thing. Anyone else have any final comments? Dean mentioned we are going to go through all the Q&A. We will, as long as we got your email, we will notify you of that when we're going to do it, and we'll answer whatever questions, and we'll keep this party going. So anyone else?
Awesome.
All right, everyone, wherever you're at in the world, have a great night or a great morning. And thank you. And we will see you next. Hold up your ahas if you actually wrote any ahas. Anyone do it? Yep, we got a handful.
Perfect.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Have a great day or night, and we will see you next time. And thank you again, Joel. Really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks, Joel.
Pleasure, and make it a great evening.